Okay guys, today what we're doing is we're building on the toppy drill from last time. What we're going to do is we're going to highlight some of the empty hand portions and maybe some of the blade portions of toppy drill using 3-count drills. So if you're familiar with the 3-count drill, you might have also learned them as back fist drills. Although they're not relegated to back fist per se, they can be used for straight punches and a couple other strikes as well. And if you're not sure where they are in the drill, we'll go back and we'll highlight some of that today as well. But we'll get into first how we're going to do the mechanics of them. We're going to break the drill down. Well, first of all, we start with back fist because it's one of the easiest strikes to pick up in terms of timing. It's one of the most forgiving if you make a mistake, if you or your partner get tagged with it. The back fist does have several uses that are kind of unique to it as well. But today what we'll do is we'll start out by defining how we do the drill. We'll define it basically either by doing a elbow-wrist back fist combination or a wrist-elbow back fist combination. And instead of just thinking about them as mathematical opposites of each other, let's think about them in terms of timing and when you would do one as opposed to when you would do another. Generally speaking, you're going to apply wrist-elbow back fist when you're behind in timing, and elbow-wrist back fist when you're ahead in timing, relatively speaking. So, we'll kind of demonstrate that in a little bit as well. But let's get into the mechanics of just how to do the drill so we're all on the same page for that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give Maggie a left-handed back fist. She's going to work on getting off the X, which basically means maneuvering, which is our first line of defense is situational awareness, but once contact's made, our next line of defense is always getting off the X. She's going to get off the X, both hands are going to come up. She's going to shield in a way that her right hand makes contact, and then her left hand's covering down, and her right hand's giving the back fist. We'll demonstrate that slow. So I'm giving her a left back fist, both hands are coming up, she's getting off the X, right, left, right combination. Okay? I'll have her do that one more time. Okay? So I feed Maggie the back fist. Good. Okay? And then let's say she gives me the back fist, and I'll demonstrate that. So go ahead. So I'm just demonstrating left, right, left. Okay? I'll do that one more time for you. Okay? So she strikes, both hands come up, off the X, strike, counter strike. Okay? So we'll do that back and forth a few reps. Okay, so I'll feed you. And one of the things we want to make sure is that our partner's always keeping their live hand up, right? They're always ready for contact because that'll become critical when we do the drill in a give and take fashion. Great job. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have Maggie demonstrate the exact same movement using a blade. So because we're going to use the blade, well, first of all, the 3-count drills are basically, even though they're empty hand drills, they're drawn from weapon arts. And what we're trying to do in these 3-count movements is we're going to try to use the movements, or the movements are basically designed so that we're exerting the advantage of having a tool by keeping the tool towards the enemy or in the enemy's space as much as we can to create as many opportunities to use that tool against the enemy, right? So in this combination, as we demonstrated, Maggie used a right-left combination. So it makes the most sense to put the tool in the right hand since it's used twice in the combination, right? So we'll put the tool in the right hand. Our standard Seizan Ryu grip, which is basically sometimes called an inverted grip or an ice pick grip with the edge towards the bad guy. And so what she's going to do is she's just going to maneuver off the X when I feed her the back fist. She's making contact with the right hand first, right? Left hand down, and then countering with the right side. Okay? I'll do the empty hand version, empty hand against blade. She strikes at me, right? I'm off the X, shielding at the elbow, down at the wrist, countering with the back fist, right? You notice with the blade, I'm maintaining control because what I might be doing, depending on the length of the blade, is I might be creating space this way, foregoing the strike, or I might be coming in and exerting some sort of control on Maggie to basically create some dysfunction where the blade's not as much of a factor between us. Okay, I'll have her demonstrate for part one more time. I'll strike you. Good, very good. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll hit on the other side of the drill now. The other side of the drill is going to be the wrist elbow side of the drill. We'll do that. We'll show the flow between the two portions, and then we'll talk about the timing and application. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to again feed Maggie a left back fist, and she's going to respond with a left, right, left combination of the 3-count movement, focusing on wrist interception, pressing at the elbow, and then countering with the back fist. So good. She's going to feed me. Right when I come off the X, both hands come up, check at the elbow, get that negative torque for the back fist. The other one, left, right, left.
Okay.
Left, right. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have Maggie take the blade now and demonstrate the blade versions. If you have somebody who's just learning the drill, using an implement or a tool in the hand that's being used twice is a great way to get them to learn or really ingrain which side of the movement they're on. So Maggie's doing a left, right, left movement. So I'm going to take the blade and I'm going to put it in her left hand. That way she's shielding with the blade and then she's countering with the blade. Okay, so I feed her. Good. And you see that she's got a more intuitive sense of how it works. Okay, one more time. Good. And if Maggie transfers the blade to her other hand and she attacks me, right, then I'll kind of demonstrate the empty-hand version. So here I'm shielding the wrist. I'm going to cross at the elbow, and you can see what I'm doing is I'm creating that space to keep that weapon away from me. I'm countering to that flank. Right, so one more time, please. So we say, we're here, boom. Okay? So don't have much control on the weapon, but I'm creating a space in terms of timing for me to execute a counter strike, maybe create an escape dysfunction, improve my position, reduce her loop, all those kinds of things. Okay, great job. Okay, we're going to put the drill together real quick. Couple of points I'm going to talk about before we even start working on any kind of flow. And Maggie's really stepping up to the plate here. She's doing a great job, learning these drills in a short amount of time, trying to put them together so we can deliver some training out during this coronavirus quarantine, shutdown, lockdown, whatever you want to call it. One of the things that's a tendency for newer people is, let's say on either side of the drill, but let's just start with the elbow wrist definition of this 3-count drill, would be for Maggie to kind of, she steps off the X, she's done this shield here, but then she also, because her brain's saying, oh, down, that she's also trying to push down with this and with both her hands. And let me kind of show you, remember these are weapon systems. Let's talk about why we wouldn't want to do that or why we wouldn't want to train that in. Why we want to make it a distinct, what we call it, either shield, scrape, sword type movement or a cross down counter strike type movement. So going back to that idea that we talked about putting an implement in your partner's hand or in your own hand as you learn this, if we put this blade in Maggie's hand and we said that she had, say, shielded with the forearm, so she gets shut off the X, right? She shields with the forearm, but she starts applying downward pressure, let's say both her hands, right? It seems like it's a good idea until we get down to here and she puts the blade into her own leg, right? So obviously, one of the things, and this isn't a specific class to blade work that we're talking about today, but maybe in the future we'll do one. One of the things we talk about is anytime the blade is towards my own body, the blade is shielded, and when it's back towards the bad guy, then it's presented, right? So that prevents me from doing things like cutting my arm in movements, right? Because I'm protecting myself from the blade, right? And so the same idea, I don't take the blade, have it exposed, and move it back towards my body in any manner, right? And obviously if I shield the blade, this is kind of an awkward movement, so I'm going to use that second count, right? So here I am, elbow, wrist, right? I have that cleared, present the blade, drive the blade. Or here I am, wrist, elbow, present the blade, use the blade. Just going back to that, so that should help the idea of trying to double use the limbs in a particular way. So what we'll do is we'll start the blade, and we'll go ahead and we'll get back into a little bit of flow. So Maggie says she's going to use the elbow wrist movement, so I'll demonstrate the wrist elbow. We'll move nice and slow. One of the things that, if you remember from Toppy Toppy, we talked about that triangle step footwork. We're going to tie that back in more detail, but really that's going to be the key here. So let's say as I go to strike Maggie, she attaches to the strike, she gets off the X, she's at the elbow, down at the wrist. Now what you see is that she's giving me the strike, right? I only have this hand, right? Which basically means that I don't really have a choice about how to do this drill right now. I have to shield at the wrist, cross the elbow, wait for stimulus, right? Here, and now she's picking up the elbow down at the wrist, right? I'm here at the wrist, down at the elbow. Now, if you notice, the step I'm using here is, here I've caught the wrist. When I go to clear the elbow, I'm clearing and flanking the striker, right? So that's why she has to use that step to get off the X. Remember, yeah, don't push down with this arm, right? So clear. Good. So step. Good. So you want to set your step so that that's what sets up your shield position. Okay. Step. That's what sets up my shield position. Wait for stimulus before you move. Right. Great job. Okay, so as you can see, even just a basic flow like that, there's a lot of pieces into it, right? And we're still only covering the very fundamentals of this drill, right? So when we get into the flow, I'll just have Maggie give me a couple back fists, right? So let's say she gives me a back fist where I have options of elbow, wrist, back fist. I have options of wrist, elbow, back fist, right? And those are both on the outside, but I have the same options on the inside, right? So I could have done elbow, wrist, back fist, right? I could have done wrist, elbow, back fist, right? So we have inside and outside variations, left and right, but we're going to kind of keep that down to a minimum for what we're doing today. And if you have a partner, this is kind of a good place where you can take these as single stage techniques like we just taught them to you, teach them to your partner. We'll call them your lockdown partner, your quarantine partner, and get into where you're working in a flow, and you're talking about the why. Why am I stepping here? Why am I shielding this way? To get those mechanics down. We're going to go a little bit deeper into this and talk about the reason that you want to be able to have this flow down, because this flow will give you the ability to switch hands, right? Not switch left and right, but basically switch. So if I have a tool in my right hand, I'm always using my right hand in a way that's front towards enemy, or a tool in my left hand the same way. So let's just say, Maggie gives me a back fist, and I pick up elbow, wrist, right? Now, I might have picked that up for a couple different reasons. One, we talked about timing, right? So maybe I was here, I was paying attention, she struck at me, and the first thing I saw was the elbow, so as I got off the X one more time, I got off the X, I was able to come in here and check the elbow, right? The other reason I might have done it is maybe I had a tool, right? So imagine, when I did, imagine I have a blade in my left hand, and I want to direct that blade, say strike, in a way that allows me to use that blade closest to Maggie, right? Maybe I'm cutting as we're doing this movement, or maybe I'm clearing and presenting that blade, okay? So either way, I have a reason for why I might want to use my left hand, okay? As long as we touched on timing, let's go a little deeper into that. Okay, so we said in terms of timing that if she gave me the back fist and I was paying attention, that I would have picked up that elbow first, right? Let's say I wasn't paying attention, right? I'm looking at you guys and she throws the back fist, see flash of movement. When I get off the X this way, I picked up the wrist first, right? Because by the time I realized what was going on and I got off the X and I brought my hands up in my guard position, that's where I ended up. So the portions of the drill that way would look like this relative to that. Paying attention, here, right? Not paying attention, right? Here, okay? So that kind of gives you, in terms of timing, a reason why there's two sides to the drill. We talked about in terms of mechanics, right? If I give you the back fist, you do elbow, wrist, right? So in terms of mechanics, when she strikes me this way, she's got my wrist trapped, I can only respond by accepting at the wrist, right? Rolling up and trapping at the elbow, maybe pressing at the elbow and counter striking, right? So there's timing reasons, there's mechanic reasons, and then what we were just talking about was strategy here, right? So let's just say I want to keep my left hand operating as much as possible in this drill. So let's say she gives me the back fist and I've done elbow, wrist, right? And back fist. And what she's done here is she's gotten wrist, right? Elbow, back fist. But see, the issue here is I want to use my left hand again. So instead of using my right hand at the elbow, what I'll do is I'll use my left hand at the wrist, right? So I'll switch from, here I was at elbow, wrist, back fist, and she did wrist, elbow, and here I double use that hand to transition to the wrist, which forces her now to see the elbow first, right? Okay? And here I can double use the hand, so you give me this back fist, right? So I double use this hand here either at the elbow, right? Strike. Here at the wrist, right? So this is tough because it requires the person that your lockdown partner, your training partner, to really have the drill internalized, right? Because I'm switching back and forth between elbow, wrist on one side, wrist, elbow on the other side, and we talked about in terms of anatomy or natural law, they only have the opposite response of what you're doing. So they have to know both drills and they have to know how to switch between the drills. Maybe we'll touch on some of those switches real quick. So let's say, without a tool, she gives me the right back fist, and I've done elbow, wrist, back fist, and she gives me the next response, which is going to be wrist, elbow. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this hands down. I'm going to use the same stepping we would imagine if we were in the toppy drill and she was throwing a number 8 strike at this leg, right? I would step off the strike this way and bring this leg back. I'm going to do the same stepping and bring this hand back up, right? So instead of bringing it down, I'm bringing it up because this is where the attack is. This is the zone the attack is in, right? So I've shielded here, but I switch now to wrist, elbow, back. So we'll demonstrate that one more time. So the switch was to double use the left hand, which we don't normally double use anything, but I'm able to double use it because of the way I'm maneuvering off the X, right? So she gives me the right attack, come here, okay? She gives me the next attack, I've maneuvered off the X, I've shielded here, boom, right? So that, one more time, looks like this, right? She strikes, it's here, right? Boom. Okay, so you can see I've double used that hand every time I had a chance to keep my left hand out in her space. I did that. Okay. Now let's say we picked up the opposite, right? So she gives me the right attack, and this time I've used wrist, elbow, back fist, which makes her do elbow, wrist. What I'm going to have to do here to get to elbow, wrist, because again here the whole goal was that she struck me here, so I was using my right hand. Maybe I had the tool in my right hand and I want to continually use that right hand. is that I'm going to circle this hand around and pick it up this way. Now, when I circle it around, I'm using that same stepping I would, again, if I was in this position, right, and we had gotten to low, high, and the strike's coming in, I'm coming this way, right? So imagine coming down around this way, right? So same idea. So she strikes at me here, this is boom, okay? And now she's striking at me, and I'm coming around and checking at the elbow, wrist, back. So that would look like this, right? She strikes, this is here, right? You go ahead and shake 1, 2, 3, boom, okay? And just to demonstrate that once with a tool, right? So imagine I have a tool in my right hand, she struck at me. I have this tool here, she goes ahead and deals with this, 1, 2, bring this around, and I have the tool out this way, right? Okay. There's a lot to work on right there. We'll come back and give you some solo ideas on how to work some of these drills. Before we kind of take off or we break here, I kind of want to touch real quickly on, again, where this is in toppy-toppy, and really stressing the footwork and the position, right? Because we talked in the last class, we talked about all the whys of that footwork, and all those whys are still true. Okay, so if we talk about what Maggie's striking my leg, right? I got off the X and I put up a shield here, right? And if you remember, what we said is the low strikes pull back and the high strikes follow through, and there's a whole strategy behind that. And you can go back and review from the last class what that was. But if what's happening here now is she's drawing this weapon back because she wants to strike high, so as she does that, I come in and I've checked. So right, this is 1, 2, she checks my hand here, right? And I'm changing direction, so as she's going here, I'm coming here, right? So this is that same 3-count movement, right? So follow it along with me, right? She strikes at my leg, right? This is the back fist, right? So this is going to be strike. This is wrist, elbow, back fist, right? And it might be wrist, elbow, back fist that looks like this, right? It might look like this, right? Or it might look like this, right? And I'm entering in and I'm striking here, right? So I'll let you guys do a little digging on your own. I don't want to give you guys all the answers to the test right away and spoon feed you, but if you can see that aspect, right? So one more time, next, right? This is wrist, elbow, back fist, right? Now just to stay consistent, if you put your stick down, right? If you give me a back fist off this one, right? So here's wrist, elbow, back fist, right? And imagine she's striking my leg, right? Here's this movement, boom, striking my head, then here's this movement, okay? Now, so hopefully you're kind of starting to see where some of those entries are tying in the same. Also, we talked about that there were other entries in the single Sinwali entry-exit drills that that we're going to demonstrate. We didn't demonstrate them in the last class because we put a lot of material into that class, and hopefully you're still practicing that stuff. So what I'll do is I'll show you one of the other entry-exits that's right out of this 3-count drill that you can put into your practice, right? So let's say you give me that number 2 strike, right? So we've talked about coming in this way. Maybe we did or maybe we didn't. I don't remember what we did in the last class. You're checking, coming around, butt strike, check, strike my head, right? And then exiting the drill, okay? Now that's one of the ways to deal with that 2 strike, right? You gave me that 2, I blocked it, and what we did is we call this a pass, right? And I passed from outside to inside. So I could also, instead of passing, I could also treat it like an elbow, wrist, back fist entry, right? So she gives me the 2, I could also come in this way, right? Which causes her to check, feed me a check. I come around, you stop this, you strike my head, boom, right? So just demonstrate that entry one more time. Let's say, give me a leg strike, give me a head strike, right? So that's that entry here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So that's probably a lot of material to work on. I'll come back and I'll give you some solo drills to work on, and then that'll be the lesson for the week. Thanks, Max. Okay, class, to wrap up with, I'm going to give you some solo exercises in case you don't have a lockdown partner to work with on these, work these drills with. So let's go back to the first drill, right? The first elbow, wrist, back fist combination. So here's how we want to think of this, right? Our situational awareness is high, our bad guys in front of us, we are locked on, they go to strike us, and we see that back fist coming in, so we're going to maneuver off the X, and when we maneuver off the X, both hands come up, right? And we're basically we're switching from regular everyday life, and we're going into that reliable, game we call it, posture, mental attention, combatives, conditioning, right? So our weight's on the balls of our feet, right? Knees are slightly bent, sternum high, ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, chin slightly tucked, but we're springy, dynamic, hands coming up, right? Our hands come up so that our short side, right, our lead side, in this case my left side, is making contact with their elbow, right? And as their hand extends down at the wrist, counter strike, okay? So first level immediate action drill response is here, boom, okay? One more time, ready, okay? Now, the next thing that can happen is maybe our situational wasn't as high. So you imagine my attacker is still in the direction of the camera, but maybe my attention is more focused this way, right? I see a flash of movement out of the corner of my eye, right, off the X, right? But now my contact's being made here, okay? And now, checking at the elbow, counter strike, okay? Remember we talked about the idea that the back fist, it doesn't have to be the counter strike, it doesn't have to be the attack either, right? So strike comes in, right, off the X, check, counter strike, right? But I could have just as easily come off the X, check, straight punch, right? The same thing on the first drill, right? Off the X, check, straight punch. Okay? So we could have done back fist, could have done straight punch. All those things we said, we start with back fist because it's preferable as a training tool. It does have its advantages. We'll talk about some of them maybe in a different class. So those are the first level drills I would say to work with, right? Then the next level exercise I would say is let's start working on some transitions, right? Transitioning from elbow wrist to wrist elbow with the intent of having a tool that we're always using forward, right? So let's say we're starting off with the idea of elbow, wrist, back fist, right? Now, that's going to make them intercept wrist, elbow, and now their strike's going to be feeding you from here. Because when you're on the elbow wrist side, the attacks don't come in from the front, the counters come in from behind you, right? So I'm off the X, I'm shielding, and what I've just done is I've shielded, instead of coming across this way and shielding at the elbow, I've come across this way and shielded at the elbow, which now means I'm at the wrist, elbow, back fist, right? So I misstated that, right? I said that I was shielding at the elbow, but I'm actually shielding at the wrist. So here, initially, I'm shielding left hand elbow, right hand wrist, back fist, and then as they counter, I'm shielding left hand at the wrist, right hand at the elbow, back fist, right? Go back and review the portions where I was working with Maggie, and you can see that, right? So one more time, so this drill would look like this. Transition from wrist elbow to elbow wrist, and that transition is basically get off the X and you're using the short side hand twice, right? So 1, 2, right, my short side hand, get off the X, and I'm using it one more time, checking, striking this way, right? The opposite way, I'm going to use a circular movement, similar to the transition from from a 2 to a 9, okay? So, if you imagine I'm throwing a backhand at 2, transitioning to a 9, it's going to be a movement that looks like that. So I say, strike comes in, I'm at the wrist, elbow, back fist, right? And as they throw their counter, I'm using this transition movement. I've transitioned to the elbow, wrist, back fist, right? So watch that one time. So we say 1, 2, 3, right? As they've, so they had checked at my elbow, down at my wrist. This counter's coming in this way. I'm going to circle and catch at the elbow, down at the wrist, counter with the back fist. Now, one of the things that's key to doing any kind of solo practice is you have to be able to visualize what your opponent's doing, or your partner's doing, right? And so, if you're not sure how to do that, go back and review the parts where Maggie and I were working together. If you have a partner, you know, go at a crawl, walk, run progression with your partner, and really, you know, kind of slow down so you can expand time, and you can put in the things that need to be there, and you can take out the things that are extraneous, wasted movement, and then through repetition you'll compress time again. You know, but the idea here is you want to get really efficient in your movement, and efficiency and effectiveness have to do with understanding the why behind what you're doing, right? So again, if we go back to the idea of putting a blade in our hand, right, and I'm using that elbow, wrist, back fist transition, where we say I'm going to use the left hand as much as possible here. Well, here I have, right, they've checked, now I'm double using this, right? Okay? So we say 1, 2, 3, right? Off the X, check, strike. Okay? One more time. Say here, Okay? So talking through it one more time, it says elbow, wrist, counter, right? Now they've countered at the wrist, elbow, and their counter's coming in this direction, so off the X I'm shielding, clearing their elbow, coming in from the flank. Okay? Conversely, right, I'm working wrist, elbow, counter, right? They're countering at the elbow, down at the wrist, right? Here, 2, 3. Okay? Watch one more time. So we say 1, 2, 3. Okay? And here's a good opportunity to work some of what we're talking about shielding the weapon against your body, making sure you don't cut yourself. So here the weapon is shielded. 1, 2, cleared the elbow, the weapon's presented, down as it comes back towards me, shielding it. Now it's back out, right? So if you're going to use weapons this way, you have to be able to protect yourself from the weapon as well. Okay, so hopefully that gives you some good material to pair with and develop the material from the last class, and gives you some stuff to be working on and thinking about during the lockdown. Stay safe out there, guys, and keep working hard, and we'll get back to classes real soon.